The subject is departure from reality, why and how to measure visual activity of digital video content. First, we have to define what is visual activity. There are a lot of definitions of visual activity, but in this paper I used this one. Visual activity is the sum of activities described as motion and movement. It's a definition from Gibson, very old definition. Motion is, of course, you are better in the field of filming and movies than me. Motion is a change of object or people, and the movement is a change of observer or camera location. On the left picture you can see the buses, it's motion, and when you move your camera, it's a movement. So I start to research this field before 7-8 years when I watched the movie Ice Age. I think that you know that movie. It's a movie about animals, but when I watched that movie, when I exit from cinema, I was so tired because there are so much movement in that movie. Motion and movement, of course, but I'm older, and when I was young I watched the cartoons like the mole, Kristian. Maybe you from the ex-social countries, you know who is Kristian. So there's a difference between old cartoons and the new ones, and of course between movies, films. So I researched, I used, of course, Google Scholar, and I have found that there are some papers about this difference in visual activity and the impact on the human beings and the animals. And there are only a few papers, and here you can see 4 of the papers. The first is author Lillard and Patterson. Second is about children. First is with children, second is with children, and third is with children too, and the fourth one is with mice. So first, second and third paper is about bad impact on children's cognitive and executive function after this high-paced cartoons or movies. And the fourth paper is about the bad impact on mice executive function. What's that? That author, it's Kristian. He had 2 groups of mice. First group, it was young mice. They were young mice. And the first group was in the cage with the LCD screen, and the first group watched 6 hours per day DVDs on that screen in the cage. And the second group was control group without LCD screen. And after that, after I think 1 month of LCD and DVDs for this experimental group, those mice had a lower executive function. They measure executive function of mice, how fast the mouse can find exit from the maze. And it's interesting that authors use qualitative measure, fast-paced and slow-paced movies. You know, fast-paced is when everything is flying around, and slow-paced when everything is slow. And one paper is especially interesting because this paper caused a big reaction in media. A lot of portals have wrote about it. The Lillard and Patterson, they separated children in 3 groups, preschool children. First group drew for 9 minutes. Second group watched documentary. It's a slow-paced documentary, of course. And the third group watched SpongeBob movie. And after that, they solved the executive function test, and a third group that watched, SpongeBob, they were significantly worse in that test. So, SpongeBob. Okay, that's it. So, what about movie content rating systems? You know, most of countries have their movie content rating system, but they don't care about visual activity. They care about violent content, pornography, drugs. Nobody cares about visual activity impact, but there are authors that write that it has impact on children. So, are we in a big social experiment? We don't know, but how can we measure visual activity in videos? I tried to find a paper about visual activity measuring, and I found two methods. First method is average shot length. It's editing speed measure. It's not visual activity, but you will see. Average shot length is falling down year by year. And the second one is visual activity index. It's a new measure. It's about 7-8 years old, and it's from Mr. Cutting from the University of Indiana, and measure of visual activity in movies. You can calculate this 1 minus median of R, where R is correlation of pixels in pair of near agent frames measured along the entire length of the film or film sequence. You will see later about visual activity index. Average shot length, you know what's that. Of course, you can see that on this side, it was the time of movies, films without sound. So you had a lot of cuts because you have to insert text, of course. But from the 1950s, I think that's about 50s, 40s, 50s, then you got sound in the movies, but you can see that average shot length is falling down year by year. Visual activity index, of course, visual activity index rise, you can see on that graph. I think it's from Mr. Cutting, from his paper, this graph. So, I ask myself, can we measure visual activity better than visual activity index? Visual activity index is, on that moment, it's the best measure for visual activity. But if you have a math background, then you know that this type of visual activity measure don't care about the noise in the movies, in the video streams. So visual activity index has a problem with noise, because when you calculate visual activity index and it's calculated every frame, you calculate correlation between pixels between every frame by frame. It's a lot of computer jobs, tasks. But when you have noise, then this correlation between same frames is not 1. It's lower than 1. Because the pixels are not same when you have a noise, of course. So visual activity index measure noise as a visual activity, but that's wrong. Noise is not visual activity, of course. So, idea is to use background subtraction algorithm to measure visual activity. What's the good side of visual activity, background subtraction algorithm? Background subtraction algorithm is algorithm that as input BSA algorithm get a video, film, movie, video clip, and the output is black and white video, but white color is moving object. So these algorithms they don't care, they are insensitive to noise, because when you use them, the main reason why you use them is to find, I don't know, when you have those algorithms are used in a camera for control some houses and objects. So you have, you use them to find a person or burglar walking in your object. That's the main reason why we use them. So these algorithms are insensitive to noise and to leaves on the wind. So it's a good idea to use them to measure visual activity. So background subtraction algorithm, output is two-color video clip, white color represents moving object and black represents static background. More visual activity in input stream causes greater amount of white pixel in output stream. So the main idea of background subtraction visual activity index is to sum all pixels, the number of pixels of foreground, white pixels, and divide them to all pixels in the whole movie. That I will jump over that part because that's the background subtraction algorithms classification and the method how I choose this one that I used in the paper, and because I described it in one another paper. So, what about noise insensitivity? Noise is usually unpredictable. There are a lot of types of noise, white, Gauss, adaptive, and so on. And Gauss noise is added with MATLAB in one video in step. You can see there is one picture. The first one is original picture, the second one is a little bit noise added, and the third one a little bit too, but you cannot see the difference on the pictures. But fourth one you can see a little bit, and fifth and sixth. In the sixth one you have the noise with variance of 1 is added and the mean is 0, and it looks like this. You can see the noise here. So my hypothesis was visual activity measuring with a new algorithm, with the background subtraction algorithm, with different noise levels added into video content are more robust or insensitive or resistant than measuring with visual activity index. So what have I done? I took 30 videos, and I had original videos and the videos with the noise. And I calculated visual activity index of between those videos, and between videos with I calculated background subtraction video activity index with the new index. And you can see the difference. When you add noise, the visual activity index, 29 of 30 videos show that the visual activity index rise after adding noise. But with background subtraction, visual activity index, when you add noise, then some videos have bigger BGSVAI, but some videos have a lower. So it doesn't make change. So I used Wilcoxon rank test to test it, and visual activity index values change is not random, definitely. But background subtraction visual activity index value change is probably random. So you can see this P is less than 0.05%, but this is probably random because you have 14% P. So conclusion, background subtraction visual activity index is more robust than visual activity index by Mr. Cutting. Generally, we have to research more because some paper suggested that fast-paced videos have bad impact on cognitive function on children. And of course, we have to research, but now there are two good quantitative measures for visual activity. You have visual activity index and the second one, my index that I proposed.